There was a 4-year stretch in this country where the single best performing asset you could own was cash, sitting in a drawer, doing nothing. Not stocks, not real estate, cash. You've been told cash is trash, that every idle dollar is bleeding value. That's true in one kind of economy. Nobody mentions the other kind. Your grandparents lived in it, and it never left them. This comes straight out of J.L. Collins' stock series, the thing that rewired how I invest. Collins has a piece on deflation I skimmed the first time because it sounded like a history lesson. It wasn't. Cash is trash is probably the most repeated line in personal finance. I've said a version of it myself more than once. It shows up in the comments under every post about somebody sitting on $40,000 in a checking account. Like clockwork. Somebody always shows up to tell them they're losing money by doing nothing with it. And here's why it feels so obviously true. Inflation runs, the dollar buys a little less every year, and holding cash is a slow leak. That's the correct read for the weather we've actually been standing in. But every investor watching this right now learned to invest inside exactly one regime, one set of rules for how money behaves. Prices have gone up almost without interruption for your entire adult life. So of course cash looks like the losing asset. It's only ever been graded on one exam. Think of it like a greenhouse. If you've only ever grown plants in one climate, you'll confidently tell people what a plant can and can't survive. You're describing the greenhouse, not the plant. So what's the other exam? Deflation. In plain terms, prices fall and your money gets stronger. Same dollar, more stuff. Cash appreciates while you sit there doing absolutely nothing with it. It's the only investment strategy where the winning move is a nap. Not infinite cash either, a specific slice of it sized to your life, not a mattress stuffed floor to ceiling. Between 1929 and 1933, a dollar sitting untouched in a coffee can outperformed almost anything a professional money manager could have bought with it. The US has had 4 depressions since 1776. 2 centuries, 4 depressions, the same ingredient each time. Deflation. This isn't a 1930s fluke. That should bother you a little though. If falling prices are this catastrophic, why does every person watching this want their rent to go down? Why does everyone want gas to drop, groceries to drop, the price on a used car to finally come back to earth? You're already forming the objection. Cheaper stuff is good. Cheaper groceries, cheaper housing, cheaper cars. If prices dropped 10% next year, most people watching this would call that a raise. They'd be right too, when prices fall for the right reason. Falling prices caused by better technology and higher productivity is the economy doing exactly what it's supposed to do. I've watched this happen inside my own industry. 26 years as a software engineer means I've stood in more than one cold, loud equipment room. I've looked at a server rack that cost more than my car. I remember thinking, we spent how much on this box? Now, a company rents that same computing power by the hour for a rounding error. Nobody calls that a crisis. Everyone calls that progress. Zoom out to the household version and the pattern holds. As a share of what people actually earn, food and transportation cost less today than they did 50 years ago. And that's even while the companies selling them got bigger. Both things happened at the same time. That's good deflation. And this is the hinge the rest of this video swings on. Good deflation happens because we got better at making things. Ugly deflation happens because nobody can afford to buy them anymore. Same falling price tag, completely different disease. So if falling prices are good, why is the Federal Reserve terrified of them? Because the Fed can't tell your good deflation from the ugly kind until it's already spreading. It's the only institution on Earth actively trying to make your groceries more expensive and getting paid to do it. The difference was never the price drop itself. It's what that price drop does to the person standing on the other side of the counter, whether they're getting more efficient or just getting desperate. Somebody loses a job. their household stops buying. So the store orders less from the supplier, and the supplier cuts a shift. Those workers stop buying too. Prices come down to chase a shrinking crowd of customers. Margins vanish. More layoffs follow. Every decision in that chain is completely reasonable. Stack them together and they eat the economy. This is the part that makes it self-sustaining. Once prices are falling, waiting becomes the smartest move available to a rational person. The thing you want is going to be cheaper next month, so you wait. So does everyone else. The waiting is the disease. That's why FDR's line gets quoted forever. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. It wasn't a motivational poster. He was trying to talk an entire country out of a psychology. This is exactly what your grandparents were standing inside. Not a paragraph in a history book, a decision they had to make with real money. I know that fear from the other side, because I lived the mirror image of it. I bought a condo years ago, right as prices took off. Waiting had a price tag on it in my head. Every month I didn't buy felt like money I was actively losing. I'm in the leasing office, signing pages I'm barely reading. The guy across the table tells me, "You don't want to wait. This place isn't getting any cheaper." And I remember thinking, if I don't do this now, I'm priced out forever. My hands moving faster than my reading is. Then the psychology flipped, on a dime. Same condo, same street, same guy signing papers. And suddenly, the buyers were gone. Sellers who wouldn't have returned a call the year before were calling me. The buyers who stuck around had the trick figured out. The unit you're looking at today will still be sitting there tomorrow, for less. They were getting paid to do nothing, and I was the one still holding the loan. I was on the wrong side of both spirals, bought into the mania, then owned straight into the unwind. I still catch myself rubbing the back of my neck telling this story. Now multiply my one condo by every buyer and seller in the country running the same math. Housing isn't a sector, it's a hub. When it stalls, the trucks and suppliers and everyone hanging off it stall too. And that's how a falling price tag turns into a depression. The 2006 to 2012 housing bust took national home prices down roughly 27% peak to trough. That's not a rounding error. That's the hub seizing up in real time. The Fed cut rates and pumped in money hard enough to reverse that mood in 2008, before the chain fully locked. So if that's the losing side of the psychology, somebody was on the winning side. Somebody in 1932 was doing just fine. Not many people, but some. And they weren't doing anything clever. Between 1929 and 1933, prices in this country fell about 25%. Do that arithmetic out loud for a second, because it's the whole engine of this video. $1 you did nothing with, just left sitting there. It bought about a third more at the end of those 4 years than it did at the start. In that same stretch, the Dow fell about 89% from its 1929 peak to its 1932 bottom. Unemployment hit roughly 25% in 1933. The person who did nothing with their money beat every professional in the country. Not because they were smart, because the rules of the game had flipped over and nobody sent out a memo. 3 things actually won during those years in the order that matters. Cash first. It gains value just by existing, the only asset in the room with no moving parts. No board meeting, no earnings call, no fine print to read. It just sits there, getting stronger, while everything else gets weaker. Bonds come next, with one enormous asterisk. You lend money and get repaid in stronger dollars, except the borrower has to still exist to pay you back. And in a depression, that's not a small ask. A government bond can survive almost anything thrown at it. A corporate bond depends entirely on whose name is printed on the paper. And then guaranteed income. Social Security, pensions. They rise with inflation, but never get cut for deflation. The cost of living adjustment can hit 0. It legally cannot go negative. It's the one government feature that only ever breaks in your favor. That's not generosity. It's a design decision somebody made on purpose. The fear when they wrote that rule was runaway inflation. Nobody was worried about the other direction. The part that actually gets me is this: the coffee can, the folded bills in the dresser drawer, the envelope taped behind a picture frame. Every single family has a version of this story about a grandparent, and everyone tells it like a joke about paranoia. The relative who wouldn't trust the bank, who kept cash where they could see it and touch it. It wasn't paranoia. That generation watched cash outperform for 4 straight years. Stocks, real estate, and businesses that took decades to build got vaporized in front of them. They weren't being irrational, uninformed, or bad with money. They were pattern matched to a regime, the exact same way you're pattern matched to yours without ever having to think about it. You would have done the exact same thing. Everyone would have. The instinct wasn't broken. It was calibrated to a world that doesn't exist anymore. Until, maybe, it does again. Which is exactly where the obvious wrong conclusion shows up. This isn't a sell everything and move to cash video. If you just watched the last 12 minutes and started eyeing the mattress, you've drawn exactly the wrong lesson. The counterweight is one clean argument. The Fed's entire job description is preventing the spiral you just watched a few minutes ago. It has one dial, and it leans on that dial toward inflation every single time. Betting on deflation means betting against the one institution that prints the currency you'd be holding. That's the don't fight the Fed idea, and it's not subtle about which way it points. My own position is boring on purpose. My ballast is cash, sitting in a high-yield savings account. My bond allocation is 0. It's the least exciting sentence in this entire video, and that's the point. That cash was never a deflation bet. It exists, so a car repair, a medical bill, or a stretch between jobs never becomes a reason to sell my index fund. Emergency fund first, always. Separate from the fund. You don't touch the fund. In a deflationary downturn, the thing that destroys you isn't owning the wrong asset. It's losing your income and getting forced to sell into the spiral right at the bottom. The cash you already hold for boring reasons is the exact thing standing between you and that. You don't have to go build this hedge. Most people watching already own it and spend half their time apologizing for it. I know, it's just sitting there doing nothing. Cash isn't good or bad. It's regime dependent, and the slogan skips that part entirely. What cash actually buys you is optionality, the ability to not be forced into a decision on somebody else's timeline. Whether that timeline is a layoff, a market crash, or a once-in-a-century depression. That's the FU money idea. Enough set aside that nobody can force your hand. Wearing a different outfit. Say the market's down 30% and your company just announced layoffs. Without cash, you're selling shares at the bottom to cover rent, locking in the exact loss you were trying to ride out. With cash, you're paying rent out of the drawer and letting the portfolio sit there untouched for as long as it takes to recover. Same crash, completely different outcome. The only difference is whether somebody else's timeline gets to make the decision for you. So how much is enough? That depends on how shaky your income actually is. A steadier paycheck can run leaner, a shakier one needs more room. The number that matters isn't what a stranger on the internet calls trash. It's what you can hold without going cash poor. Not so much that it's sitting there earning nothing for years on end. Not so little that one bad month wipes you out. Somewhere in between, sized to your actual life. Go back to that grandparent for a second. She held cash her whole life because she only ever saw one regime. You hold stocks because you've only ever seen the other one. Nobody knows which regime your retirement decade will hand you, which means that mix has to shift for 30 years straight, right through the panics that make people decide badly. There's one fund that already does this for you. One ticker, one decision, and it shifts the mix on its own every year until you retire. Millions of people already own it and never picked it. It's sitting inside their 401k, the default they clicked past on day one. Next time, what that fund is actually doing under the hood. Click it, and I'll show you what you're already holding.